Uncle Ron stuff. This is part 2 of replacing a convection fan inside an oven. In part 1, I talked about how you could determine whether you have a problem with your convection fan in your oven and how it's generally supposed to work. I tried to be generic in the first part because there are a lot of different configurations of convection fans. So you could even have 2 inside of there, or 1 speed, or a 2 speed, or all sorts of variations. I ascertained that the convection fan and the Jennair uh, gas top and electric oven, the vent fan, the convection fan was not coming on when it should have. When you push convection and hit a preset temperature of 325 or whatever it is, and the symbol would come on that the fan should be running, and the reality is that it should come on and rotate at a slow speed, and then once it hits the predefined preheating is done, then it should switch over to high speed and stay on until the time period for cooking or whatever is done. In my case, I could observe through the window that the fan was not rotating at low speed, and I thought it might be doing some rotation at high speed, but not, it was flaky, I didn't know. So anyway, today I'm going to just concentrate on my specific uh, Jennair uh, gas cooktop and electric oven. And this is what it looks like. Kind of hard to see. I'm trying to. Yeah, there you go. And that's the model number at the top, and I'm going to focus on that. So what did I have to do? Well, I did, based on this model number, did a search, and I was able to find that this is here it says right there. That's the model number over here that I have. And this is the actual assembly number up here, and there is an entire assembly with the motor. But I was able to find that, and this is what it looked like from the front side, and this is what it looked like. This is the front side. This is the actual back side of the assembly. I also found that this, the fan assembly, was no longer available. It says that over here. So I decided, well, I'll pull the fan out of the oven, even though the circuit diagram that I have for it, which is right here, sort of. Let's see. Yeah, convection fan is right down here, and it shows 2 speed. It has 3 wires going to it, and if you follow it and trace it, it goes to a relay board that's built into the control panel, and control panels usually run on some lower voltage, 24 volts, 10 volts, 8 volts, I don't know what it could be, but they don't use 120. That's the actual control panel. I think it's probably a code. You don't want that kind of voltage. Anyway, it could be that the relay board, um, when the control panel, you push convection and you set preheat, the control board sends a signal over to the relay board to close a set of relays to engage 120 volts to the slow speed convection fan motor. And then once it reaches preheat set, the control board unhooks the slow speed relay but latches the high speed relay, which sends 120 volts to the high speed winding of the motor. Okay, that's how it's all supposed to work. I know my fan is not working. It could be the relays are not working correctly, the slow speed relay. But I'd start at the end of the circuit. I start at the fan. I pull the fan out. So how did I do it? First thing I did was I wanted to find the breakers for the oven. And in my case, I have three breaker panels, A, B, and C. On the front of my panels are a list of dedicated breakers. And when I looked at A, B, and C, I found the gas stove dash oven listed on as part of panel C, and it was breaker 15 and 17. C being the panel A, B, and C. This was the C panel, breaker 15 and 17. So what I did was I popped them off. You don't want to do anything on a 240 volt appliance until you cut the breaker off, and this is currently in the off position. Okay. Now, I go to my handy dandy Jennaire um, oven, and I open up the door, as you see here, and I tilt it forward at this position, which then allows me to basically put my hands on either side of the door, right there, and lift it up and take it out of the way, which results in it looking like this. No door on the front. And you can see these door prongs. There's one, there's the other one. They're up at an angle, and you can move those with your hand if they get pushed back in. But anyway, the door just sort of slides down on these particular uh, levers right here. So you take out the grill, the grates, whatever they're called in there. And in the back of the oven, you see the convection fan. There has a black sort of cover over top of it. But inside of there, you can see the actual fan blades. Okay. This is, up here is the top. This is the bottom of the oven. And one of the things that you take the grates out, one of the things that you really want to be careful about, and to get the cover off, which we're going to start doing to get this fan out of there, you need a Phillips screwdriver. Okay, on this convection fan, there are 6 sheet metal screws. 3 which hold this porcelain black cover on. They go completely through this porcelain cover, but they also go through the sheet metal face of the convection fan. I'm showing you here in this diagram which screws go to which. When I say outer, I mean the cover out here. When you see an inner, that's where the screw goes actually through the fan assembly and just holds the fan assembly in place. 6 screws. There is an orientation to it. Take a picture, make a diagram, however you want to, because it'll be confusing if you go to put it back together and you try to put the wrong screws in the wrong locations. Okay, so I take the cover off, and now I have this is what I stare at. And again, what I'm trying to show you, up here at the top, you'll notice that there is a big hole and a small hole. That is the top. That is the orientation. I think I tried to show you before, and you'll see it in a minute. There is a hole in behind this particular assembly that the fan sits through the back of the oven, and it only will fit in one way. Again, there's 1, 2, and 3. Keep this assembly in place. You Phillips screwdriver those out. All 6 screws are the same sheet metal. Okay. Now, I have this. This is the top of the oven up here, and what I've done is removed the assembly. You see it is a round assembly just there, and there is in fact a hole, and it is got sides on it, here, 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 and here. It is rectangular. It's not a square, and there are wires that come out the back and go to a connector that you pinch, and you can disconnect the uh, convection fan assembly and take it away. Okay, that's what it looks like, and you'll notice there's insulation all around here, and I'll also point out that in this box here that you see down here, there's also insulation in that box. So this is the back of the oven, back face of it. This is how the vent fan, convection fan fits in, and the motor fits down into this rectangular box in there, and it makes sort of a seal. That's the idea anyway. All right, so I pinched the connector, took my assembly. It's the motor and the plate and the fan blades. That's all an assembly. It took that complete assembly out. All right, now I know I got a problem with the fan, but I don't know what it is yet. So here is sort of what I had. In fact, this is the motor that I had in that wasn't working right. Now, when I pulled it out, the first thing I noticed was the fan blades do not want to turn easily. On a fan like this, you should be able, the fan blades should continue spinning for some time. So my first thought was that perhaps, if you want to call them bearings, where the rotor of the fan turns, that perhaps they needed grease. So the first thing I did was, okay, maybe the motor's not bad. It's just motors like this, and it is known as a shaded pole, 2-speed, Class B, which means it's got a cover over the windings, that's all. First thing I did was I took all this apart, used just Phillips screwdrivers to take it apart, and I wanted to get to the actual motor, and perhaps all it needed was a greasing. Okay, now let's see. Oh, I have one more to go. So I have the motor out, the whole assembly out. There was insulation inside of here. I have the whole assembly out of the oven, and now I'm down to the motor, and you'll see and you'll notice that there is actually a inner fan in here, which is kind of interesting, and that's meant to cool the motor itself that sits in the cavity in the back of the oven. And this is where you're going to need an Allen wrench or a torque wrench. I have the torque fit fine, so that's what I use. And you can take this fan blade off. There is a sort of a notch at the top of the shaft, and it gets stuck on that. So there it is. Now I'm down to the motor, and you'll notice how the motor mounts to this box flange here. And it's simply the same thing, Phillips screwdrivers, Phillips screws, and I take that out. And now I'm down to the motor. Now, on the motor, looking at it, it does have a model number. It states the manufacturer. I'll show you in a minute. But I'm getting down to the motor. Now, this is the motor. So you see that the shaft here, it's turning in this cup in the back. And also the shaft extends through this, if you will, bearing holder in the front. So what I did was take the motor completely apart. I used a nut driver, found one that fits, and I can take the shaft completely out of the motor, and I did, and greased up where the shaft set in the back. This is the long screw holding it together. Thinking, well, that could be the problem, so I'll go in this direction first, because it just wasn't turned freely, and it should, there's just nothing, there's no load on it other than the fan. And here I pull it apart. Here's the it gets stuck here. Anyway, you can see in here, sort of there, in here, there's sort of a coppery bearing. It's really just sort of pressed against the shaft. And back here, there's really nothing. And if you were to look inside of there, you see it's just a copper sort of pressed. It's not really a bearing. There's no bearing, ball bearings going around. It just sits in this pressed in copper thing. And so what I did was I loaded this up with grease, and I put grease all around the shaft here on this end, and I puts it all back together. And okay, well, maybe that will fix my problem. I gotta get it back together here, and I probably don't even have it the right way. Let's try the other way. It will only really work one way, of course. And this goes in here. And this is the basics of electrical motor. I have had plenty of times where they just need to be greased. Some motors are so poorly made they don't have anything except cotton in the end of the shaft. They squirted some oil into a cotton wad and used that, and the oil dries out, and then there's friction on the shaft, and it doesn't turn again. So I greased it all up. I thought, well, maybe that would take care of the problem, and put it back together. And I'm tightening it up here, sort of. I don't think I have it in the right dimension anyway, but the point being was, I don't, but it still wouldn't turn freely. All right, so that doesn't seem right, but what can I do? All right, so next thing was, okay, well, I'll see what happens if I apply power to the windings. I know it's 120 volt, and the motor itself, which I have sort of a picture of somewhere. This is the actual picture of the motor, and the fact that it's got you can't see the coil, it's just wire wrapped around here, but it's got a piece of cardboard over top of it all, and that's what makes it a Class B motor. It's got protection around the coil wires. Okay, so on the motor, I could determine it was an A.O. Smith motor, and there was the model number, 67B2. There was also another number here, which is the number for this whole assembly. It is a MayTag or Jennaire assembly number. So I thought, oh well, I looked up Parts Depot for my particular oven, and they said weren't available. So maybe I could try just buying this motor or this assembly number. No, nothing on A.O. Smith. In fact, A.O. Smith has been bought by a company called Century now, who makes electric motors, and I'll get into that in a minute. But this assembly number down here, no, could not find, did not come up under any kind of search. I couldn't find that. So it didn't help much. But anyway, and now at this point, I got my motor, I greased it up, but it still acts like it's not working right. So I'm going to energize it and see what happens. And this is what I did. I had an old line cord over here, and I stripped off the ends of it. And then over here on the motor, there was a white wire. I get over here. On the motor, there was a white wire, a red wire, and a black wire. Now, from the circuit diagram for the convection motor, I see that in this one, it actually, right there, of course, it's reading it upside down. It'll show you, it actually has the color codes, and white is the common, and then I got a black and a red, which are the windings for the slow speed and the high speed, okay? And it shows the connector. Now I've marked it that the red is the slow speed winding. So, back to this. I got 3 wires over here. The white, common, a red, and a black. So what I did was I took my line cord over here, and I got 110 volts, and I used little jumper clips, and I connected one side of the AC to the white wire, which is common, and then I clipped the other side to the slow speed. Now, um, obviously I didn't have it laying on the floor, the fan part. I had it set up at an angle, so if the fan did come on, I would be able to see it turning and how well it did. I plugged in my line cord, nothing. On slow speed fan, it wasn't turning at all. Okay, so I took the jumper off of the slow speed connection. I unplugged it, of course. I put the jumper on the high speed fan connection. I plugged it in, nothing. Okay, so obviously I have a problem in the motor. The common, for whatever reason, the common is not making a solid winding connection. The power should come in on the white line, and the other either slow or high speed winding. Between those two, there should be a coil that gets fully energized and causes some magnetic rotation of the fan shaft. Okay, but it wasn't doing it. Okay, so now I know I need a motor. I don't know about the relay board yet, but I know I need a motor. I need a replacement. I already know that I cannot find the actual assembly that this particular model number calls for, because it's not available. All right, so what do I do? Well, the first thing I thought about was, well, look at just getting a motor. And as I told you, I found the model number on the motor, but it didn't do me any good. I no, A.O. Smith is gone. So what am I going to do? Well, I thought about it for a while, and I started looking at motors. I knew that this is what's known as and I got here somewhere, it is a shaded pole, which are this coppery thing here. and there's a coppery one down there. Those are the poles, shaded poles. And I know it said right on here, pulled 0.3 amps. I know it's 120 volt AC. And I know that it is, because it's got this cardboard, I know that it is a protected, or Class B. It's also protected if it thermally pulls too much current, it pops itself off and it's done. That may have been the case here because I couldn't get anything to do anything. The pop may have come in the white wire portion. Anyway, I decided I would look around and look for motors that fit this particular 2-speed shaded pole, 120 volts, uh, 0.3 amps, not a heavy duty thing because it's just turning an air fan. It's not turning a belt or anything like that. Well, there are literally hundreds of small appliance, 2-speed, shaded pole, Class B protected uh, motors, but they vary on which way they rotate, clockwise, counterclockwise. They vary on the length of the shaft here. They vary on how they're mounted. In this particular case, you see I have a flat face mounting right here. The screws come through the mount plate and into this. Um, there are motors that have these bolts back here. They go all the way through and they stick out the front, and that's how they're mounted. And I thought, well, you know, if I could find one close that even did that, I could use the screws out of this one, although that's iffy. You start getting iffy when you cannot find the exact match, and you start just looking physically for something similar. Because these things, if you look at any of these motors up here, they'll have specific dimensions on how wide these openings are. They'll have specific dimensions on the shaft length that's available to you. They'll have differences in rotation. What I didn't know was this was a clockwise rotation. There are counterclockwise. So the whole motor thing was a disaster. It's possible, I guess, I could have found something. Again, there was no cross-reference sheet that said A.O. Smith motor whatever and whatever is equivalent to this. I don't know why they didn't do that, but they didn't. There's no Century probably makes this motor somehow under some number, but I don't know what it is, and I'm not going to go any farther. So what do I do? Okay, well, I start looking. I can't find anything new. So I started looking at eBay used assemblies. And here's one of them that I found. And it looked very similar. It's got the round sort of mounting here. It's got this box here. You see that? It's got 3 wires over here, which means that it's a 2-speed. I see that the motor is protected by this cardboard down here. Um, uh, I know it's 2-speed. I can see it's a shaded pole. Um, that's the assembly number up there on eBay. Not even close to what I had. So what do I do? All I really need is the motor. But I have no clue whether this particular assembly, this plate around here, and the holes on this box, if they would mount up or not. So I had to take a chance. And in fact, I did order one that looks like this. And in fact, when I took this all apart a while ago, as you'll see, this is actually the flat plate that I wound up like this. This is a flat plate. And I know it wasn't right, but just wanted the motor. And so I got this whole assembly thing in, took it all apart. In fact, here is a example This one just appeared on eBay, and it looks a lot closer to what I have than what I bought. Because for one thing, you can see the plate has got a rib on it, and mine did have this sort of ribbing that sticks in the hole in the back of the oven. And it also shows that it's a 3-speed, it's got the wiring. What is different is I think the connector over here looks slightly different, or actually this one might be identical to what I have. The one on the one I bought did not have identical connector, as you can see up here. But that didn't bother me because I could always clip the wires off of the old motor I had with the correct connector on it and then mount them to the new motor that I pulled off of this. Okay, go and take a shot. So I did get this in. I did remove the motor from the misassembly. I mounted it just like I showed you how I took apart the whole motor assembly over here with the box and installed the Stultz screw heads. You see that, and I put the new motor in. I cut the wires off of my old motor, and in the end, what I got it to look like was like this. Now, this is the motor that I bought off of eBay. It has been mounted on my plate, you see, which has a ridge on it. And here is where I cut the wires off of the new motor used motor that I bought, and attached the correct connector for my back end wiring. And I just wire capped it. I twisted the wires together really well, and then I wire capped it. And actually I didn't to start with because I really wasn't sure in my diagram. I hadn't found it yet, which would tell me which wire coming out of the back of the oven was actually the slow speed, what color wire in the connector was slow speed winding and which was high speed. So I left it open and tried, and then by trial and error found which wire was which. I have since found that it is marked on the electrical diagram down there, and it says black, white, red. Okay. So this is what I wound up putting together off a used motor that I got off of eBay with my correct connector on it. Now, I took this, I went back to my oven, and I put it back in there as I had shown you how it came out. Again, I connected the connector off the motor to the pigtail connector that was hanging off the back. I set it up there, and with the orientation that I'm showing you, the metal box that is highlighted by the 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, and 4, that hold that metal frame to the metal plate. This is the alignment that I use to get it mounted to the back of the oven. I have my connector connected now, and you can see these are where the sheet metal screws go to hold that in place. And then I put my cover back on, and I show you where those screws went, the sheet metal screws to hold on this back cover. Okay, obviously when I switched it over, I had to use my handy dandy, I switched the fan over as well. It is interesting, the model that I bought off of eBay had a smaller fan. This is the old one off of the unit that I bought off of eBay. The inner fan was the same size. They were both held on with set screws. You'll have to have something to release that. But anyway, I got it all back in there, and I went back and put the oven door back on, which again, you move it over, hold it on both sides, and you lower it down on the two levers that are sticking out the bottom of the oven. Okay. Then I went back and turned the breaker back on for the unit. And this time when I pushed convection, I wanted convection bake, and I hit preset. Looking through the door, I could see that the rear fan was rotating inside of the black porcelain cover. I could see it rotating. And I watched it, and once it was done with preheat, this fan did pick up speed. It got switched to high speed. And I know the relay board was good. It was the fan. Um, why the fan doesn't want to turn, I showed you that it doesn't really have bearings per se. It has sort of a pressed copper thing. And I assumed that over a while that, if I went in there and pushed them slightly or bent them slightly, I may be able to get it to turn freely, but then I would have some slop in the shaft. So that's what I did to get it fully operational again. Now, as I said, I picked up a used fan off of eBay. Now, a repairman is not going to do any of this for you. They can't, won't, don't have the ability to do it. Now, as I said, this is a search today on eBay, and I found one that looks a lot closer to what I have than what I wound up buying. And I'm thinking about procuring it because, again, I bought a used motor. I don't know how long the motor might last. So I might take up this one as a spare because if they're not available in 2024, how many are going to be available in 2028, 2040? I don't know. Eventually it'll be impossible. Or you might have to go and just bite the bullet and work your way through all kind of different motors there are to find the right motor that fits the specifications. The motor I put in, I have no idea what its speeds were. I know that I think what was supposed to be it was 1200 RPM at slow speed and close to 3000 for high speed. I do not know what speeds are on the motor that I put in. They could be lesser and more. I don't know. My impression is from experimenting that the high speed is turning at a higher speed than what I had. But done very little cooking, so I'm not real familiar with convection and how much time you reduce baking something when you're using your convection oven. So this is Uncle Ron's stuff, way too long, but I wanted to cover the whole thing and give you an idea of what is required. There is some tools, nut drivers, Phillips screwdrivers, Allen wrench, and you have to take a chance on eBay buying a used assembly and switching things over. But that's a whole lot better than replacing the entire unit, which is usually what a repairman would say you, well, the motor's not available. You either don't have a convection or you got to throw it away. Uncle Ron and stuff. And that's it for today. I am thinking about a follow-on having to do with this particular um, cooktop and oven because I had to replace the spark unit associated with the natural gas burners on top. Not a big deal. That part was available, and so I'll go through that quickly as well. Appliances like this are not overly complex. Even the control board is rudimentary. It's just not much. And you should, if you can get the parts, it's really easy to do repairs yourself. Uncle Ron's stuff today is the 1st of February 2024. And that's it for now. And I just wanted to show you what I had to do, but I did get it. Persistence pays off and a whole lot of luck sometimes.